Next mailbag question. This one was awesome. And so I wanted to just dive in on this one. This one's going to be a little bit lighter, maybe, than the last, but it comes in from, and we bleeped out his name for reasons that you're about to find out. And we've also redacted it from the email that you're about to read. But he writes in and he says, "Hi, Joel. Love watching your show and hearing your insights. I'm sure you're going to love these insights. I have a question about your thoughts on getting a prenup before marriage. I'm getting married this August and make significantly more than my fiancé. The reason I am thinking about getting one is in case our relationship goes south 10 plus years from now. I live in California, and it is a community property state where things get split 50-50. If our relationship continues strong, then we won't need the prenup, but it's nice to have protection. Do you think it is necessary / wise? Thanks." Well, here we go. Okay. So, I mean, this is amazing. So first and foremost, I want to do two things first with this question. Number one is, let's call it what it is, and let's be honest with this. Regardless of the situation, whether you have a lot of money or don't have a lot of money, or whether you're asking or being asked, this is not an easy conversation. And this is not just like, the laws in this state happen to be, community property, and what would you think, babe, about this? Like, do not tiptoe frivolously into this conversation. Oh my gosh. Okay? Your fiance deserves better than that. Okay, so that's number one, is do not take this lightly. And don't just be like, hey, I was thinking. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is, you're going to have to, I feel like I've got to define my view of marriage first for you before you can hear my thoughts on this, and then you can take it with a grain of salt. So here's my view of marriage. My view of marriage is the biblical view of marriage, where the two will become one flesh. Okay? My view of marriage is that marriage is not a partnership. It's a union. And my role within that union is to die to myself daily in order to serve and honor and love Sarah. That's my role within the relationship. Now, she has the same role in terms of dying to herself to respect and honor me. That's the way I think that this circle works best, where I'm doing everything I can to love Sarah as completely as possible. All right? In my view, as Christ loved the church. Her role then becomes like, because I'm loving her, she is respecting and honoring me. That's the way, like, in our almost 20 years of marriage, that's when our marriage is really flourishing. It's really flourishing. So, again, I don't view marriage as a partnership, which can have contracts and agreements. My view is a union, and my union will only be broken when I'm in the dirt. Okay, so that's my view. Now, I'm not naive enough to say like, nope, prenups just have no role whatsoever. So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios where I believe that it's appropriate to discuss in a really soft and loving way the potential of a prenup. Okay? Number one, if one of you is bringing family money that you yourself did not earn, Okay, there's a trust. Maybe a grandparent made a bunch of money. Maybe a parent made a bunch of money. I don't know what it is. It's family money. It's not anything that you built, but it's going to be yours. It's in your name. There's a trust. Maybe it's a certain date when you get it. Maybe it's when you turn 40. I don't know. However the trust is set up. That money is not something that you built. All right. And so if your family wants to protect that money, and in particular, the person that built that wealth wants to protect that money from your relationship, then I think that you can talk about that. And I know people on both sides. I know women that have protected family money, and I know guys that have protected family money. And guess what? Generally speaking, the spouse or the fiancé at the time, while it's still not an easy conversation, they eventually understand. Because remember, you've got to play this thing out. Regardless of how the instance or the situation arrives, that's not an easy position to be in to have that requested of you. Hey, if this doesn't work out, I'm sorry. Like, what? If this doesn't work out, like, do I need a backup plan? Right? So the conversation is not ever easy, not ever. But in the case of family money that wasn't built by the individual, I kind of understand it. The other scenario that I also understand it, if you're a person that built something of significance in terms of a wealth stature, and you have children that predate this relationship, I understand asking for a prenup that protects the wealth for the children specifically. I think that's kind of obvious. I also know couples on both directions that have this model. And again, the conversations are not easy, but I understand them. And the last thing that I would say is, like, game this out a little bit. So, like, you sit down, what do you think this is going to look like? Because in your email, you just said, I make significantly more than my fiance. Well, she's your fiance now, and she'll eventually be your wife. In my view, that union, you become one flesh. Like, she is helping you build that career. You might not think of that now, but even if she were to say, like, hey, because of our job status, I want to stay home with the children. What, are you going to be like, well, I make all the money? It doesn't work like that. So just game this out. Imagine what that conversation looks like. Hey, babe, like, oh my gosh. I just don't think it's a great idea for you. I don't. Again, I brought up my view of marriage. I brought up the two instances that I understand, at least broaching this horrifically difficult conversation. You seem to be just wanting to tiptoe into it because of the California community property rules, in which there's going to be a 50-50 split. Like, yikes. Please don't do that. I think that you need to think about this a little bit more. What's the upside? Let me say, there's a good chance, there's a percentage chance you bring this up, you're not going to walk down the aisle. Do you want your ring thrown back in your face? That's a potential for this conversation. Here's the other potential in this conversation. Here's another scenario. She looks at you and she's like, yeah, that's fine. How do you feel now? Oh, man. I don't love it. I really don't. Again, I'll just end it like this. I wish more people would treat marriage not as a partnership, but as a union. And that's what I would say. All right, let's move on. That was a good one, man. I tell you what. Woo. Please don't tiptoe into that conversation. Email us back, by the way. Joel Klatt Show mailbag. gmail.com. I really want, please tell me you're like, hey, I heard the podcast. I did not broach the subject. And I'd be like, oh, thank goodness. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.